Welcome back to Sunday Vibes, one and all. It's myself and Doogie Critchley for your viewing pleasure this week once again. And we are well into the Euros by this point.
We
are well into the Euros. As we're filming this, Germany and Scotland is a mere hours away, I guess, or a day away. But by the time you're watching this, it will have all been happening. Germany, Scotland, Hungary, Switzerland, Spain, Croatia, and Italy, Albania will have already been done.
First
games
well.
of the first two groups. Some absolute crackers in there. Hopefully, fingers crossed. And we will just be hours away from Serbia v England, Poland versus the Netherlands today as well. So we decided to go for another Euro special on Sunday Vibes, looking at the players who could make headlines in this tournament, the players who could become household names, the players, most importantly, who could be getting big moves off the back of Euro 2024. Myself and Dukes have split into three categories: hidden gems, ones for the future, or next big thing, that is, and mega moves. We've all picked three players in each section. But first of all, Dukes, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm very excited. It feels very real now. The nerves are starting to increase. The thoughts, the permutations are running through my head. But no, I'm ready for it. Bring it on. I love international tournaments. I love it when it's in the summer in particular. I mean, not very sunny vibes over here in the UK at the moment, but hopefully they will turn up at some stage and bring it on. May the best team win.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so excited for the Euros that I actually worn my Rooney football. Remember the name. Also him in the England kit, scoring.
Have you tuned
in
against the new BBC documentary?
I did. I watched it last night. Yeah.
What are thoughts? What's it like?
What, the Rooney one?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's just half an hour. It's effectively just a recap of Euro 2004 because that was the Rooney tournament, and I mean, with bits and bobs, and there's some really nice sound bites from Rooney from his interview and from kind of various kind of players and pundits kind of looking back to it. But yeah, it really did get me in the mood, and you kind of looking back at Euro 2004.
Great tournament.
Great tournament from multiple aspects. Obviously Greece winning it. It was kind of Ronaldo's breakout tournament for Portugal as well. Rooney, of course, but the Czech Republic were probably the best team in that tournament. I don't think that gets spoken about enough. I think that was, you could argue that actually the Czech Republic were the best team in the world at that point, which is pretty mad to think. I don't think we've really had a team outside of the kind of traditional big guns be better than anyone else really. The days of Pavel Nedved, Milan Baros, Jan Koller, Thomas Rosicky in that team.
I'd also say
Lucy.
The kits were better as well. The kits were better. I loved the early 2000s kits.
They were really good. That was when
maybe it's when Italy were going skin tight, which wasn't such a good.
That
look,
was but Italy's. I think that Italy kit had had a bit of a gold theme. It was like kind of dark gold Puma, and also that was when Nike started doing the total 90 kits with the numbers in the circle, and then the Nike tick up here, and obviously the boots. Obviously the early 2000s.
Everyone's wearing
the boots.
Those.
Will never ever be as good as in the early 2000s. You had the Predators, you had the F50s, you had the total 90s, which I do think prediction, unless Nike are already planning it, I do think the total 90s are going to come back in the next couple of years.
Really?
I just think there's a clamour for them. Like,
why don't you start wearing them on your Sunday sessions, and then it will start getting the ball rolling?
Maybe start wearing this. The problem is like actually getting hold of some original total 90s is quite difficult, or at least it's quite expensive. I know some people, a few influencers have managed to get their hands on them, but I do feel like the clamour for total 90s to return will get too much, and Nike will bring them back. So that's my prediction.
Love it.
But I guess kind of touching on Euro 2004 as well, it was interesting to kind of watch clips back from particularly Rooney, but just that England team. It was a really entertaining England team, and I think I don't know, actually England did play some really, really good stuff at the last Euros, but I think in terms of pure good football and entertainment, I think it's hard to think of an England team that has played as well as that one did in 2004. Rooney just strutting his stuff. just no fear in the guy.
So quick in those days he was.
He was really quick, and it's just a shame, isn't it? Because he entered the following tournament with a broken metatarsal. Yeah. England then didn't make Euro 2008 when Rooney was at his peak as a Champions League winner, having played with Tevez and Ronaldo. He would have been going into that.
And then the team in 2010 was like not quite up to it. I think the best players just never really turned up. I mean, Gerrard and Lampard still had a great few years after that, but it just didn't feel like that England side was particularly happy.
And Rooney came into that tournament in great goal-scoring form, but I can barely remember him at that tournament.
Well, that was the one he was like, nice to hear your own fans booing you.
Yeah.
He was losing
He'd also taken on more of a striker role at United, and so was less involved in build-up. Yeah, weird tournament, that one. But anyway, I digress. Less England.
Let's talk about the next big things, though.
Because we will be talking probably less so about England in this episode for sure, because we are going to be looking at, first of all, hidden gems. Shall we start on? So Dukes, we've got 3 players each.
Do we want to do one per category?
Ooh, let's do that. Let's do that. Okay. So Dukes, who is your first hidden gem?
My first hidden gem. I think he's fairly hidden. I don't know. I haven't seen that much talk about him.
I must admit, there's one of my hidden gems that isn't hidden at all, but he's just a bit of a wild card. Yeah, kind of. But anyway,
I think most people would have heard of this guy, Arthur Théâtre of. I don't think I've done the pronunciation particularly well. It's French pronunciation, Arthur Théâtre, of Belgium and Rennes. He's been playing regularly for Rennes over the last 2 seasons. Prior to that, he actually went on loan to Bologna in Serie A. So that's nice. He's played in a few different environments. He's played in a few different systems as well. Rennes didn't have a great year last year, but the season before they finished 4th. Last year they finished 10th. They went through 2 managers. Some of their big summer signings, particularly Enzo Lefebvre, probably didn't land as people were expecting necessarily. They also lost a number of key players the previous summer, including Ugo Chukwu, Lovro Majer, Jeremy Doku, Loic Bade, who had been on loan the previous season anyway. But Théâtre was absolutely crucial for them. He was their 3rd most used player. He played most of his football at centre-back. He is a left-footed centre-back, but he can also play at left-back as well, which I think could be quite useful for this Belgium squad under Domenico Tedesco. And in terms of his Rennes rankings last year, passing first, passes into the final third, second behind Benjamin Bourigeaud, who I think is one of the most underrated creative talents in Europe. Progressive passes, second, and then also really stuck in and did his defensive work too. Clearances, he was first. Blocks, he was first. He really was exceptional for Rennes, albeit in a very, a side that didn't probably live up to expectations last year. And in terms of his rankings around the rest of Europe as well, in terms of progressive passes and progressive carries, top 7% in Europe. So on the verge of being truly elite in those categories. Liga isn't as testing as some other leagues, but I do think he is ready for a move. But let's talk about what happened at the World Cup, because Roberto Martinez's side got grouped for the first time since 1998 in the World Cup. Arthur Théâtre was in the squad but didn't actually play a single minute. And it does slightly worry me that Domenico Tedesco hasn't used him that regularly in 2024. They do have a number of very promising young players, of which Arthur Théâtre is still involved, and some old-timers. There is the Vertonghen, there's Axel Witsel still there, Thomas Meunier is now injured, but Timothy Castan's been at multiple tournaments as well, and it's Théâtre, it's De Bast coming through, it's players like that, and De Kuyper as well is getting a lot of praise as well, a fullback that can play on both sides as well. I really hope that Tedesco goes with Théâtre, unlike Roberto Martinez's Belgium in the last World Cup, who played 3 at the back, I believe. I think Domenico Tedesco, having come through the Red Bull system, is a more classic 4. But he needs to be using Théâtre over someone like Axel Witsel, who's, I don't know how he's just had his contract extended at Atletico Madrid. They need to be starting to move past him. But Arthur Théâtre, I think, could have a breakthrough. Last year, he was linked with Liverpool. This year, he's been linked with Roma. He feels like he's on the verge of a breakthrough, and I hope he has a great tournament, because I love watching him play.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, he will have to have a great tournament if Belgium were to progress, because that back line is
the worst part of it.
Injury hit. Like you say, Vertonghen out. I think Witzel's had some injury problems as well.
Is Vertonghen fully out? I think
Vertonghen may miss the first game.
Right.
Meunier's injured as well. And so, the fullback areas. One player who I was actually going to include in this video, but I think is still going to struggle to get on the pitch under Tedesco even, is Zeno De Bast, who has been pretty remarkable for Anderlecht, still only 20 years old. But yeah, I was going to talk about it, but it doesn't see, even though he's played a fair amount in friendlies, it still doesn't look like there's a clear path to the first team. Still feels like he's behind De Kuyper in the pecking order, even with all these injuries. Even though De Kuyper's got less international experience than him, he is a few years older and is coming off a couple of great years at Brugge. But yeah, great shout, Dukes, with Tayat.
Who would be your first? Yeah.
Sorry?
Who would be your first? Your first hidden gem?
My first hidden gem. Again, not so hidden, but I think he will be an unsung hero in this Germany team, and I'm also going for a left back. It's Max Mittelstadt, 27 years of age, so couldn't get him into kind of a one for the future. Don't know whether he'll get a huge move this summer, although left backs are in demand this summer. So maybe he will, and Stuttgart will probably post a decent profit on him if he does leave. But he only joined Stuttgart last year, and his rise has been really remarkable, actually. A real late bloomer at 27.
So he must have been the Borna Sosa replacement at Stuttgart, which was that was big shoes to fill.
Big shoes to fill, and Stuttgart, I don't think expected him to fill those shoes. He came through at Hertha Berlin, never played for anyone else in his career, but had a very mixed career at Hertha. Of course, his kind of early to mid 20s, coincided with Hertha's, major decline within German football. He had some really mixed seasons. Of course, relegated with them last summer. Back in 2018-19, he actually had to deactivate his social media for an entire year because he was getting so much abuse from Hertha fans.
Wow. That's sad. So
the fact that he is now stepping into the Euros as the first choice left back for the hosts, playing under probably the most prestigious manager at the tournament in Julian Nagelsmann, certainly the most high profile, and and Nagelsmann has called him one of the 4 best left backs in world football.
Love that.
I mean,
in 1 year, in 1 year,
500k he cost Stuttgart last summer. Pretty amazing stuff. Until this season, he'd never played more than 2,000, or had never played 2,000 Bundesliga minutes in a season, and ended this campaign second in the Bundesliga for tackles, 9th for interceptions, ranked 7th for crosses into the box, got 2 goals and 4 assists. His underlying numbers throughout are popping. When you look at his FB-ref, he's green in almost every single stat. Just super hard working, crunching tackles. I think he makes around 5.5 tackles and interceptions per game. Also very proactive getting forward, likes to take players on, good ball progressor. Mittelstadt seems to have everything, and at his age, despite being a late bloomer, I think he's certainly kind of physically is fully developed and is now in his peak years. So I do think he is a decent option for, say, I don't know, like a Man United, who are still kind of waiting with bated breath to see whether Luke Shaw or Tyrell Malacia will be able to last next season. I don't think Mittelstadt is going to command the kind of fees let's say even someone who I'm going to talk about later, Milos Kerkez, might demand out of Bournemouth, given that he's coming from the Bundesliga, given that he doesn't necessarily have 10 years left in him, but is a good option in terms of a squad player or someone who can potentially fill a gap for a few years, amid those injury problems. But
sorry, just to interrupt. The one thing that worries me about that is Bayern Munich, Alphonso Davies' future is not very secure. Real Madrid still sniffing around. Would they potentially look at him?
Potentially.
Dortmund,
they still
I imagine,
Guerrero, though.
True. Dortmund, I imagine, will try and try everything in their power to get Ian Maatsen, but you never know. Maybe that's not possible. Maybe they look at him as well. And I just think, does a player that's playing for Stuttgart, that's just had this big breakthrough, got into the Champions League, want to move to Man United this summer? I don't know. Maybe it's not the time to join.
Yeah, maybe not. I just think he's probably the profile they're looking at. And you mentioned Dortmund. he does seem like an incredibly Dortmund kind of player. Mittelstadt, left back, has been a bit of a problem for them over the last few years. Like you say, Ian Maatsen, top of their agenda. But equally, you know, when Dortmund have tried to sign kind of players who are a bit more at their peak before, it's not necessarily worked. I'm thinking kind of Nico Schulz a few years ago. I do feel like Dortmund tend to thrive. Yeah. The long forgotten.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do feel like Dortmund have more success when they do just buy raw talent.
Crazy news, just on the topic of Dortmund. We are filming this on Thursday. A couple of hours ago, Edin Terzic resigning.
Yeah.
I mean, there was speculation that he'd be under pressure for his job, you know, prior to the Champions League final. But obviously they put in that amazing performance in the Champions League final. Maybe he just thought he'd taken them as far as he could. And yeah, it's the end for Terzic. It looks like, I mean, by Sunday it might be confirmed, but Nuri Sahin might be the new long-term manager. He's been a coach there since January. Hummels, before the Champions League final, was slightly sticking his oar in, as Mats Hummels likes to do, and was basically giving a lot of credit to Nuri Sahin for their upturn in form in the Champions League. But I'd love to see Pochettino. I'd love to see Pochettino at Dortmund. It feels like we've been talking about it on Football Daily since I was a young boy.
Yeah,
but
probably like 2019. Probably since he left Spurs.
Well, exactly. But yeah, huge news. Terzic gone.
Yeah. It did feel like that Champions League campaign papered over the cracks, didn't it? Let's face it.
They were really bad in the league.
It's a tough one. It's a tough one. You know, you can say the same about someone like, you know, Ten Hag and his form in the cups as well. But yeah, I would be well behind Pochettino to Dortmund as well. You know, no one else seems to be coming in for him. He's so well suited.
With a lot of other managers, Dortmund now. Like I mean, I know he's resigned, so it wasn't really their call, but yeah, it's not ideal timing for them.
Yeah, you think about Motta going to Juventus.
Someone like, I mean, I think doubt they'd go for him, but Fonseca to Milan was announced today. Like, that is the caliber of manager, or maybe even slightly above that they'd be looking for.
Even Fonseca is that. Yeah, he's that kind of caliber. He plays good football. So yeah, interesting times for Dortmund. Dukes. Let's go on to your first next big thing.
Yeah, so I think the categories might be a little bit confusing. Next big thing I took as they've already established themselves, but they could definitely get a move this summer. I haven't necessarily done it on pure age.
I've gone for young ones on next big thing.
That is what we should have done. That is what we should have done. But to be fair, this is a guy that's only really... Well, actually, no, I'm going to take that back, because 4 years ago for Rennes, he was very good. But it feels like he's on the verge of a real breakthrough at this international tournament, and it's Lovro Majer of Croatia. He's now at Wolfsburg. He joined Wolfsburg last summer. He played 3 seasons, I believe, at Rennes, but he's 8 years into his professional career. So he's far from the next big thing. He is 26 years old, as I've already said. This year, for a very poor Wolfsburg side, which seems to be the theme of my early suggestions, 5 goals and 5 assists. And he's had a really good build-up to this tournament. I don't know whether you guys saw the highlight of Croatia versus Canada, I believe it was. In the build-up, Lovro Majer scored 2 goals, one of which an absolutely sensational left-footed free kick. And yeah, I think he's chomping at the bit. And with someone like Ivan Perisic, that he's just sort of coming towards the end of their career, there's less pressure in those forward wing spots. Or, I mean, he's more of a number 10, but they are looking to, maybe they'll have to play Pasalic wider, and Lovro Majer could come into the picture as well as those sort of creative players behind what we expect to be Kramaric, although they do still have Bruno Petkovic as well, who had an excellent World Cup. But it's worth touching on his previous World Cup performances, because Lovro Majer wasn't picked for the Euros in 2021, but at the World Cup, which was only 18 months later, played very well. He scored against Canada in the opening game. He tucked away his penalty in that shootout against Brazil. And this season for Wolfsburg, in a struggling side, he has shown glimpses. I feel like this is maybe not someone that's going to light up every game for 90 minutes, but a real moments player, and does have a lot of technical quality. And even this year in a poor Wolfsburg side, he's at close to 0.5 expected goals and assists per 90, which I think is pretty impressive. And Wolfsburg finished 12th. So Lovro Majer, definitely one to watch, maybe coming off the bench, maybe a moment of magic, but he's coming into this tournament in good form, judging by their friendlies.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Croatia, judging by their friendlies, do come into this, beat Portugal
as well.
I think, underestimate Croatia at your peril. Obviously, didn't have a great Euros last time out, but obviously the last 2 World Cups, absolutely superb.
I said the friendly was against Canada. I've just looked at my notes. North Macedonia. North Macedonia.
Cool. Right, so
2 nations that often get confused for each other.
Yeah. One and the same.
Yeah.
One and the same. Nice. I like that shout. I'm going for my first next big thing.
Which is an actual next big thing.
An actual next big thing. He could have been, in a couple of these categories, to be fair, because he is going to be a potential star at this tournament. Although he won't probably start, but I do feel like that that there could be, he could build up some momentum in the group stage if he's allowed to kind of get 30 minutes at each game and really do some damage. It's Johan Bakayoko,
great
PSV and Belgium, coming off a huge breakout season at PSV. I mean, actually, last season really, the season before was really his breakout, but this season was where he really established himself. Yeah, I mean, obviously PSV had an amazing season, 91 points, which is an Eredivisie record.
Ooh.
In the 3 points era at least. I think Ajax in the early 70s would have got 93 points if it was 3 points for a win.
Gotcha.
So not technically, but
still exceptional.
Certainly a club record. They only lost one game, and that was at the end of March against NEC, by which point they'd pretty much wrapped up the title, or were close to doing so. 12 goals and 9 assists in 2,500 minutes. He only turned 21 in April, Johan Bakayoko. And I think it's just the range to Bakayoko's game which is particularly impressive, and is why a club like Brentford was so interested in him last summer. Of course, he turned them down.
You won't be moving to Brentford this summer.
Definitely won't be moving to Brentford this summer, and it's an interesting one. When that was all going on, the club, as part of their kind of strategy for persuading Bakayoko to stay at PSV, were like, well, Brentford are coming in for you this summer, but next summer it could be a Champions League club if you stay here and you continue to develop. And that is probably what's going to happen. Yeah, £34 million is what Brentford offered. PSV wanted closer to 40 million. It's generally thought that when Bakayoko leaves, which I wouldn't be surprised if it's this summer, if not next summer, he will be their record departure. I think Hirving Lozano is their current record departure at around 45 million euros when he went to Napoli back in 2019. Gakpo around that level as well when he went to Liverpool. But yeah, I mean, he's super strong, he's super quick, super intelligent in and around the box, and I think his ability to, as a left-footed right winger, not only cut inside and shoot, but also have the ability to use his right foot, dribble round the side, and actually produce cutbacks, produce crosses to the back post, kind of sets him apart actually, and I think is something that's becoming a little bit more of a requirement for wingers. It feels like the age of wingers who just cut in, I think it is slowly coming to an end. I feel like wingers are being tasked with doing more in the kind of early to mid 2020s, and I think that's what makes him a real draw. His progressive carries are through the roof. I think he produced 197 progressive carries last year, which I know that's just it's kind of jargon, but it essentially at any time that you're progressing the ball upfield, and in particular into the box and in the final third, with the ball at your feet counts. And the only player, if in the context of Europe's top 5 leagues, I know Eredivisie isn't one of those, but in the context of Europe's top 5 leagues, the only player to produce more was Jeremy Doku, his compatriot, who will be playing on the left.
Belgium are going to be fun to watch.
Belgium are going to be really
leaky potentially at the back, and a lot of fun going forward.
And that's going to make it all the more fun. The only thing with Bakayoko is that Trossard is ahead of him in the pecking order in that forward line. So we expect there to be a front line of Trossard, Lukaku, and Doku, with of course Kevin De Bruyne pulling the strings behind them. But I think in that group stage, which is a relatively easy one for Belgium. Definitely. I think Bakayoko should be getting minutes, and I think should start at least one game if Tedesco knows what's right for him. And even then, I just think him coming up on against hard defences, especially if Belgium are already 1 or 2 up against, say, Romania, it's quite a scary thought.
Yeah.
And I feel like he could actually build up some pretty decent numbers and get himself into the make himself a household name come the knockout stages. So yeah. definitely keep an eye on Bakayoko. I think he could end the tournament being linked with some seriously big clubs.
I love it. Right, it's time for some mega moves. I've got 2 from the same team, one of which I'll mainly be focusing on here briefly. Jeremie Frimpong.
Yeah.
It's happening.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you guys have seen any of the highlights of their friendlies, but the impetus he's added when he's either come on or started is just frightening. He is just almost like a cheat code on that right wing, which does slightly concern me because this is linked to transfers. I'm not quite sure where the right landing spot is for him. I said Inter Milan a couple of weeks ago, given that they play a 3 at the back system, gives him more license to get forward. Please do not sign him if you are not going to use him in the areas that he's most dangerous in, because that just feels like a complete waste. But obviously, there's probably I can't think there's too many more confident footballers in European football right now, or at least deserve to be confident on the basis of the season he's had. 12 goals, 14 assists, did the whole Bundesliga season unbeaten, won the DFB Pokal, lost, 1 in 50 odd games, which was the Europa League final. And Jeremie Frimpong, alongside Grimaldo and Xhaka, was probably their 3 outstanding players of one of the most remarkable seasons that European football has seen this century. Was close to probably being the most remarkable one. So huge credit. And we saw in the impact in that game versus Canada, this was against Canada, that he was like razor sharp. 1 goal, 1 assist. And the assist in that game was provided for Memphis Depay, who is my second mention here, because we're looking at a guy who is out of contract at club level. As it stands, he has nowhere to go as this tournament finishes. And look, he feels like someone that might end up in the Middle East at some stage in his career. He's very into a slightly flashy lifestyle, however you want to spend your money. But Memphis Depay's time at Atletico Madrid, I don't think was an embarrassment by any means. I just think he was behind Griezmann as a number 10. He was behind Morata as a number 9. There's no shame in that. He didn't necessarily, suit their system. But even in moments last season in La Liga, you saw his quality. And put a Dutch shirt on Memphis Depay and he turns into a completely different animal. He's now on, 44 goals in 90 games, which, considering he's played a lot of those games on the left wing, is pretty remarkable.
It's great, and it's mad. I mean, he is. I guess he is kind of almost got veteran status now. It's literally 10 years since that breakout tournament under Van Gaal, which makes me feel very old. But
it's crazy.
It's pretty mad to think that he has been kind of on the international stage for that long.
Yeah, and he's 6 goals now behind Robin van Persie. Look, unless there's something crazy happens this tournament, he's not going to break it this tournament, but he will break it at some stage. I can't really see him retiring from the Netherlands unless they win this competition, but even then he'd probably just carry on to break that record. But you're talking about one of the best strikers of the 21st century, at least in sort of European terms, and Memphis Depay is almost at his level, and no one would ever put Memphis Depay in that category. So massive respect for everything he's done with the national team, and I can see him, I don't know where he'd end up post this tournament, but he will get a move somewhere, and if he has a good tournament, it could be to another Champions League club.
Yeah, absolutely. I've gone for Nico Williams for my first mega move. I've gone in big. I've gone in really big there. Just think, again, a little bit like Johan Bakayoko, although I think Nico Williams has a higher profile than Bakayoko for obvious reasons, playing in La Liga. Has been part of this great athletic club side. He, of course, won the Copa del Rey this year. I just think, any big club in need of a left wing is going to be looking at this guy.
Especially because he's played on the right as well in the past.
He has, yeah. I mean, he's super versatile in that sense, and he is a right footer on the left, but he is still primarily a creator, and so you can play him on the right. And even just thinking about Bakayoko, it's like you think if Salah leaves Liverpool, then I think someone in the mould of Bakayoko or Nico Williams is going to be the kind of player that they're after. Someone 2021 who's got years ahead of them and is just beginning to really explode numbers wise. 5 goals and 11 assists in La Liga last season, but then he also got 3 goals and 5 assists in 6 games en route to Copa del Rey glory. Scored against Barcelona in the quarters, scored against Atletico Madrid in the semis. In fact, scored and assisted his brother Iñaki. I think they scored and assisted each other. Great connection they've got. Just a shame that we'll never get to see them do it on the international stage.
Level,
of course, because Iñaki plays for Ghana. But I mean, I just think him and Yamal on the left and right for Spain could be a real problem. And I think it adds a dynamic that Spain actually haven't had in quite a long time. Like two proper, like precocious, direct, skillful wingers who can both score and assist with ease.
And hug the touchline as well. Sometimes it feels like Spain get a bit narrow.
Get too narrow, and they always have done, like in the kind of, you look back to the Del Bosque era where it was a very kind of Pep style. It was almost a more defensive version of Pep ball where, it was possession for possession's sake almost. And who were the wingers then? Did you have Pedro? I mean,
maybe Pedro on one
David
side.
Villa often played on the left for Spain.
Yeah.
With Fernando Torres through the middle. I remember Cesc Fabregas playing through the middle at points as well as a false nine. And now you've got Alvaro Morata, who's coming off the best form of his career at Atletico Madrid, much more experienced, got the captain's armband, and you've got these two absolutely superb young wingers. Amazing that Yamal's still only 16, but I think that's going to make Spain a real problem at this tournament. Arsenal have supposedly been linked with Nico Williams as well. Bayern Munich supposedly linked with him too. Juve and Liverpool have been linked with him in the past. He does still have 3 years left on his contract, which was signed last year. And Athletic Club they never let their assets go for cheap for obvious reasons, because it's harder for them to replace them than most other clubs. I've got a feeling that with that contract, he may well stay 1 more year, and then Athletic will, try and get a significant fee for him next summer. I can see them pricing him out of the market this summer. Having said that, I don't know, if he has a big tournament and someone comes along and they're like 90 million euros, I think it's really difficult to turn down. And I think that's the kind of fee that you could see. Like, I mean, he receives 12 progressive passes a game. That's how important crazy. He's come to this Athletic Club sign. Yeah, that is Saka levels. And his creative game has just gone to a new level despite him playing on the left as a right footer. Like he is pretty two-footed in that regard. Exceptional talent, who I think is going to be he's going to be one of the most entertaining players at this tournament.
Love it. Right.
Should we go on to... let's go back
to hidden gems.
Dukes, who's your second hidden gem?
Lazar Samardžić of Udinese and Serbia. 22 years old. Can play as a central midfielder, can play as a number 10, can even play on the left wing. But I think he's going to be a bench option, to be honest, this tournament. There is so much competition in that Serbian midfield, and particularly up front, it's going to be interesting to see what formation they go with as well, because obviously Vlahovic is there, Jovic is there, Kostic is there, Tadic is there, Sergej Milinkovic-Savic is there. So I think he'll be a bench option, to be totally honest. But last year at Udinese, a very poor Udinese side, although their 15th place position I was looking at earlier, in terms of their underlying numbers, they're actually rated as the 11th best by expected points. So I think they were slightly unlucky to finish as low as they did, but went through, I think it was 3 managers, finished with Fabio Cannavaro as manager. He's now left the club, although did steer them to safety. But it was pretty nip and tuck about whether Udinese were actually going to go down. But Samardžić still finished with 6 goals, 2 assists. There's very few goals in that Udinese side. Him and Florian Thauvin were their most creative players. You kind of even forget that Tauvin's even at Udinese. But Samardžić has been on the radar for quite a while. I think it was last summer that Inter Milan were very, very close to signing him. The move collapsed at the 11th hour, reportedly because his dad asked for more money at the final moment, which Inter Milan weren't up for doing. Samardžić just come out and said how much those reports hurt him. So who knows whether that's true, but that is what I have read. Then Napoli came in for him in January. That obviously didn't materialise. He's maybe a little bit glad to have not joined Napoli as it is, although an opportunity to work under Conte, who knows. But he's now being linked to Juventus even, which I imagine is attached to whether Teun Koopmeiners is and how bad his injury is, I suppose, because they play in a similar sort of position. But interestingly, he's also being linked with Brighton, which is quite a rogue one. But Samardžić, a really fun player to watch, connects midfield and attack, left-footed. There's a lot of technical quality in there. Plays with a certain intensity as well, and I think he could be a real asset off the bench for Serbia, who I expect to have. They've never, for a long time, they haven't really maybe lived up to the expectations at international level. But I think Serbia could have a really good tournament. And if I was England, if I was Denmark, I'd be taking them really seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly a tough first game for England with all the physicality in that side. I know our friend Joe Tomlinson has written them off. He's got them finishing bottom of the group on his recent predictions. He's picking up Slovenia, interestingly. But yeah, certainly a
Joe's
huge
been
talent
to his head.
So he has been fully Sheshko'd. Yeah, he has been fully Sheshko'd. But yeah, good shout. I've gone for another midfielder who I think has gone under the radar a little bit of late. Luka Sucic, 21-year-old Croatian midfielder, may well not start in this tournament. In fact, will almost certainly not start. But I think if Croatia are to progress in this tournament, I think they do. They will
need some bench options.
They really need some bench options in that midfield, because it feels like the days of relying on Modric are maybe over. He's still got to start. He's still the captain, and had an amazing 2022 World Cup. But that was, coming off a 21-22 season in which he was still a really key player for Real Madrid. That's no longer the case with Modric. I know he's staying at Madrid for another year, but maybe with Kroos leaving, he'll get more starting time next season. But the days of him being like an actual key player, it feels like they've slowly come to an end.
It's the last dance.
Maybe it is the last dance, but never write him off, man. I mean, he was still good. Like, I still remember him against Brazil in extra time, and he was still just like
running the show.
Running the show and running around loads. Like it is mad just how much stamina that man has. But Luka Sucic, I think, 21. I think in some ways by now, I think many would have expected him to have had a higher profile. 3-4 years ago, he was being talked about as the next Luka Modric, and injuries certainly disrupted his progress within the Croatia youth system. Missed a couple of tournaments through injury at under 21 level, but he was an unused sub in Qatar, which is pretty mad given Croatia made it all the way to the semis, but wasn't quite ready for it then. But now has a fair few caps to his name. He's got a penchant for a screamer. Scored 3 goals last season for Salzburg, 6 assists as well in 1,500 minutes. So a goal and an assist around every 180 minutes. He's been a mainstay in that side for a good 3-4 seasons now. It feels like the midfield three for Croatia will be some sort of variation on Brozovic, Modric and Kovacic, but they do have good backup there in the midfield. You've got Pasalic in that squad, you've got Vlasic as well, Sucic, all players. I mean, you're missing a real defensive linchpin there, but they all, are very adept in the final third, and Sucic in particular, I think, is very adept at linking the midfield and attack, and his defensive work for an attack-minded midfielder is also really impressive. So I think kind of late in games, if you need someone to press the opposition a little bit, put them under pressure, then I think Sucic will be someone to look out for, and certainly feels like the kind of player who, off the back of a decent tournament, if he raises a few eyebrows, he might. That's not even saying raises a few eyebrows, but if he gets a few people's attention, he does seem like the kind of player who,
I think raises a few eyebrows actually works.
Yeah,
with
maybe.
Surprise,
like an Ancelotti eyebrow.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe. But he feels like the kind of player who is set for a move to a top 5 league, not necessarily a Champions League club at this moment in time. But you never know. He feels like a really intelligent and useful kind of attack-minded player.
Love it. Okay. What are we into? The second round of next big things. Okay, this guy's 100% moving this summer, according to Fabrizio Romano. And who am I to doubt the Italian Magnifico? Youssouf Fofana, 100% leaving Monaco this summer, supposedly ready for a new chapter. And I'm excited about where that new chapter will be. I think he's been really excellent for a number of years at Monaco, to be honest. Monaco ended up finishing second. He contributed 4 goals and 4 assists. He's been used in a variety of roles in midfield as well. I think, he really sort of eased Tchouaméni in when he was at Monaco. Now he's this all-action, really pops in terms of his passing. His ball carrying's ridiculously strong. His defensive actions was the best at Monaco last year as well. And there's rumours of around 30 to 40 million pounds will be enough to get him out of Monaco, which is pretty exciting for a guy that played 6 out of 7 of France's World Cup games. Played, well, not often as a starter, but still contributed. I think he started 2 of those games. Came on the 96th minute in a World Cup final. Clearly really trusted by Didier Deschamps. And you look at their midfield options this summer. Obviously, there's Tchouaméni, there's Camavinga, but Kante, it'll be interesting to see what sort of form he comes back in. Adrien Rabiot, hasn't had as good a season as he did the year before at Juve. I think Fofana could play an even bigger role, and he has been capped 18 times now by France. He scored 3 goals in that time, and he's a really great all-rounder. He ranks in the top 5% of midfielders for progressive passes, top 11% for successful take-ons, and yet can also contribute defensively because he is a bit of a man-mountain as well. Everything is there. So I'd be really, really excited. And he has been linked with a number of clubs. I think he's been linked with Man United. He's been linked with Arsenal, are the ones that I've seen most frequently. But Youssouf Fofana, I think, could have a really good tournament. Look, there's lots of competition there, but I can see him playing a big role. And on the back of that, a move.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, he does feel like he's just a very tidy footballer, isn't he? Fofana, not particularly spectacular watch, but
that's the thing.
Very useful to
when he
have
comes on the
side.
pitch, everyone goes, "Oh no!" Why are they taking Camavinga off? It's just such a silky operator to watch. But Youssouf Fofana is seriously effective. Yeah,
it kind of brings the best out in the players around him, doesn't he? And like you say, you talk about Tchouaméni. He had a great partnership with him before he left. My next big things, I mentioned him earlier, Milos Kerkez of Bournemouth and Hungary.
You expected big things out of the Hungarians?
They've. You know what? It's going to be interesting with Hungary because they're not in the hardest group aside from Germany. There was a big...
Scots have just thrown their iron brew everywhere.
Well, it's a funny... the psyche of Scotland fans in general and their feelings around this tournament, I think, is also really interesting because it's there's this kind of optimism and massive pessimism at the same time, and I don't know whether that's to do with Scotland's inability to ever get out of a group stage at a major tournament. It's a really funny one, and it's a shame as well with Scotland because this time last year they were one of the most informed teams in Europe, and have dropped off significantly since then. Obviously, the injury to Lyndon Dykes as well has opened up kind of a bit of a hole in the forward line. But I don't know. That group is going to be super, super interesting. I think Switzerland feel like the ones to finish second.
Do not underestimate the Swiss.
Never
Tricky
underestimate
tournament team.
The Swiss, and do have some great players in there. But I don't know. It's a funny one with Hungary. They're coming into this tournament in great form, and I feel like a few weeks ago everyone was bigging them up, and then it felt like, someone said, "Oh, but remember Turkey at the last tournament," and everyone's been like, "Oh, actually, no, Hungary aren't going to be very good." But I mean, they were, they caused Germany some problems at the last Euros. In some, they were almost going through that group.
That's that crazy group
before Leon Goretzka scored, late on in that game, and they have been, there is something about them clearly. Another concern kind of going into this tournament is the conduct of the Hungarian support. They caused quite a bit of controversy at the last tournament, and the kind of links to the kind of
not the
propaganda of, well, certainly not, and they are kind of used by Viktor Orban as a way of kind of
it's like a political tool.
Yeah, a bit of a political tool. And interestingly, I was reading a bit about Milos Kerkez, about how he's an example of an outlier, of someone who's is one of the biggest Hungarian talents, and yet his rise really has nothing to do with the money put into football by the Orban government, because he was born in Serbia, then eventually came through started off youth football in Serbia, then moved to youth teams in Austria, and then eventually made his way into Hungarian football with Győr. Sorry if I've absolutely butchered the pronunciation of that club name. But then he was persuaded by Paolo Maldini to join AC Milan in 2021. Then he, as a result of kind of not really getting much football, I mean, he was only 17, and as a left back, going up against Theo Hernandez, but wasn't getting much, wasn't really getting a sniff there. So then moved to RZ Alkmaar a year later.
That's where it kicked off.
And then it really kicked off for him. Had that great full season at RZ, and then got that move to Bournemouth, where he's just gone from strength to strength under Andoni Iraola. So yeah, for 20 years old, and I know a lot of that was youth football, but he's played football in Serbia, Austria, Hungary, Italy, the Netherlands, and England. I mean, that is an incredibly cultured and well-travelled individual at the age of 20.
No wonder he's not, linking up with Orban.
Yeah, but I mean, he's... well, I mean, I don't know what his feelings are towards Orban, but I guess it was more just, he isn't necessarily a
product of that system.
A product of the kind of Hungarian youth ranks. He's developed his football in a number of different countries, but yeah, I mean, he has had a big impact on this Hungary side. He's only lost 2 games. I think he's played 16. He's only lost 2 games. One of those was a friendly against Ireland in the build-up to this tournament. The other one was a Nations League defeat to Italy. But his first appearance for Hungary, in which he completed the full 90 minutes, was a 1-0 win over Germany shortly after they beat England 4-0. And he plays as a wing back for Hungary, differently to Bournemouth, where he plays at left back and he inverts a little bit more. We see him go into the half spaces a little bit more for Bournemouth, but for Hungary, he really does hug the touchline. He wears number 11. Like, he's super. He's operates a lot around the box. But it's just his energy really that really sets Milos Kerkez apart. I think, like, if you think of like what a modern fullback, if you think of a stereotypical modern fullback, Kerkez kind of fits the bill in some ways. He is just so rapid. He is so fast, and he's just so aggressive. Like, he loves a slide tackle. He loves taking a player on. His numbers in all of those aspects are yet to pop, but like, he's just got that raw ability and that kind of feistiness that I think you need to make it at the top level. I think it will take, a manager when he's maybe 21, 22, 23 to kind of refine his game. He still does need to be coached, but in terms of someone who I think is just going to be really, really exciting to watch at this tournament, and I think he's really one to watch. And also, if Hungary are going to have success in this group, I think it's going to be from stretching teams. It's going to be, stretching Germany on the break and stuff. And I think Kerkez is going to be, so key to that. Of course, like, Szoboszlai is the real kind of maverick and talisman in that side. But, he's going to need help from the supporting cast, and whether that be kind of Orban, holding things down in defence, or Kerkez, really stretching play on the left. That's where the help is going to come from.
Love it. Right, we're into our mega moves.
Yes,
round 2.
So I feel like you've taken on the presenting role here. I'm
no.
unused to it, but yeah, mega moves.
Moving on, round 2. I'm going to talk about a player that I could easily see a real clamour for in a few weeks' time, because I think England really need him to have a massive tournament, and it's Marc Guehi. Huge pressure. I do feel a little bit sorry for him. He hasn't necessarily probably got the amount of caps that you'd maybe hope, given that he's the big hope of this international tournament. Hopefully John Stones recovers from his illness. It did sound like he trained today as of Thursday, but Marc Guehi's only got 11 caps for England. What I like about Marc Guehi is that he does have experience of major tournaments with England's youth ranks, which have gone exceptionally well. He was an under-17 World Cup champion. He made the final of the under-17 Euros as well. He was named in the team of the tournament at that Euros. And you look at some of the other players that he was playing with in those tournaments, particularly the under-17 Euros. There was the Phil Fodens, there was Dominic Szoboszlai, as you mentioned, and it's so satisfying to see them having gone up through the grades together, as it were. This year at Crystal Palace, unlike his first 2 years, he had some injury issues. I think he missed 12, 13 games or so. That's not ideal preparation. It felt like when Glasner came in, it was really Joachim Andersen that took his game to a new level. And Palace were exceptional, but he has missed a number of games this year, Marc Guehi, which is not ideal, given the fact we are expecting him to play such a huge role. Lewis Dunk had a huge dip in form. Ezri Konsa played a lot of his football at right back and just isn't as far up the pecking order as Guehi at international level. So I do expect it to be Marc Guehi. This year at Crystal Palace, his numbers are a little bit down in terms of his tackle success rate has dropped below 60%. His aerial duel win rate is, I think, just below 60% as well. Not terrible by any means, but not vintage form Marc Guehi. But having said that, there is so much talent in this guy, and I really think if he has a good tournament, the profile that are just the media storm that comes with putting in good, solid performances for England in a group that should be won. You know, everyone gets nervous before a tournament, but England should win this group. England should mainly be keeping clean sheets in this group as well, or at least not facing too much traffic. And if Marc Guehi has 3 good, calm games, I think the noise around him, you know, goes up massively. And he's linked with Man United. He's been linked with Arsenal in the past. I think there could be any number of clubs after him, and I do expect him to take a lot of interest. Whether Crystal Palace want to sell him this summer, I highly doubt it. They'd rather keep hold of him, but if a huge offer comes in, it's part of their business model. And they've already signed a Real Betis. They signed him from Barcelona, actually. Riyad, who was on loan at Real Betis last year, who's a left-sided centre-back to play in Glasnow's system. They've got Joachim Andersen. They'd love Guehi to be that right-sided centre-back, but if £50 million comes in for Guehi, Crystal Palace, with their track record of improving that squad, mainly from the Championship, so effectively in recent years, I think they could replace him. So it's going to be a fascinating few weeks for Marc Guehi, and a mega move, or at least talk of a mega move, could be coming.
Yeah, it feels slightly inevitable. Like, yeah, at his age, yeah, the fact that he's a left-sided centre back as well, I think like really sets him apart in that respect. And I'm going for another left-sided centre-back for my big move. It's Gonçalo Inácio out of Sporting CP. Looks like he's going to be Ruben Dias's partner in a back four for Portugal, although, you know, in their last friendly against Ireland, they played a back three with Antonio Silva, and a back three actually really suits Inácio. That's where he plays for Sporting CP, is on the left of that back three, and he is the ball progressor in that side. I think he makes something like 8.5 progressive passes per 90 for Sporting CP. That ranks him in the top 1% of centre-backs outside of Europe's top 5 leagues. Such a talent at 22 years old. He's already made over 170 appearances for Sporting. You know, he really has been one of the probably 2 or 3 huge success stories of Ruben Amorim's time at the club. Reportedly has a £51 million release clause, which I think is quite low.
£41 million.
51, yeah, which feels quite low for a centre back who I think is going to be in high demand this summer. He's been linked apparently liked by Liverpool, who of course in the long term will be looking to replace Van Dijk at some stage on the left hand side of that defence. I think his ball playing ability alone just sets him apart. He is so comfortable with the ball at his feet, and so, you know, can even, you know, his ability to step into midfield means that, you know, you could even play him if you wanted as a bit of a 6 as well. Only Pote and Gyökeres played more minutes than him this season. And the fact that he is, you know, ahead of Antonio Silva, ahead of Pepe in the pecking order for Portugal, I think speaks volumes. Like, he's a bit of a leadership figure at the back as well, and it is a big reason, you know, why Portugal go into this tournament as many people's favourites. Actually,
they're mine.
They're yours. Speaking of Joe's video, he's put them down to win it as well. I feel like Portugal's kind of strength from front to back is just where people are, you know, why people are feeling so good. Just that depth, you know, in the defence is so promising. You know, if Inácio gets injured, then, you know, Antonio Silva or Pepe popping up there is great. And I speak about Antonio Silva, he's another player who could go for big money this summer from Benfica. I'm not sure of his contract situation, and again, like, Benfica tend to get, you know, they'd probably demand like 80+ million for him. But, you know, another Portuguese centre-back who is, you know, going to be in high demand, you know, in this, if not this summer, then next summer. So yeah, Inácio I think will have a really, really big tournament. Let's go on to our final one. Shall we kind of rattle through these? I feel like these. So hidden gems. Dukes, who is your final hidden gem?
This is more of a fun story that I wanted to put some shine a spotlight on. I don't know how big a role he'll play, maybe from the bench, but I'm going with Tommy Conway of Scotland. This is so fun. So this guy was born in Taunton, and those not from the UK, that is part of Somerset, which is mainly known for its cricket. It's a place in the southwest of England. I never know my east and west. But he qualifies for Scotland through his paternal grandfather, who grew up in Stirling, which is actually near where I grew up in Scotland. He scored for Scotland under-21s against Turkey, and that was the day before. I think Lyndon Dykes got injured. Ben Doak also got injured as well, but he got called up as a replacement for Lyndon Dykes. And it's really exciting. This is a guy that's kind of making his way in the Championship with Bristol City, a side that, have been mid-table for the last couple of years. I think they finished 10th last year in the Championship. He scored 10 goals this year. He scored 9 goals last year for Bristol City. This season, he contributed goals in big games. Sunderland, Hull, Middlesbrough, Ipswich. He scored twice against West Ham in the EFL Cup. And now he gets the opportunity to go to a major tournament with Scotland and probably play a backup role to Lawrence Shankland and Che Adams. I expect it to be Shankland that probably starts the first game. He has, played better, I think, in the friendlies before this tournament. He had a better season than Che Adams did for Southampton, for Hearts. Back-to-back great years of scoring regular goals in Scotland. It's probably Shankland's turn for a go. But Conway is an exciting one. And in terms of a move after this, if he gets some minutes, if he grabs a goal, there is talk about Rangers and Celtic looking at him. The issue is that he's got 1 year left on his Bristol City contract. They could sign a pre-contract with him in January and only have to pay $300,000, I think is the report that I saw, of compensation to Bristol City. So it feels like maybe not one for this summer, but one for next year. Look out for Conway.
Love it. My final hidden gem, I was panicking a little bit here. I was running out of time to find players. I originally had him for a mega move. But I thought, interestingly, similar circumstances, brought into the squad off the back of injuries, may well not get much minutes. Despite his talent, Joshua Zirkzee, not a hidden gem. He's not a hidden gem. Like, he's, people know about Joshua Zirkzee, but still, was a little bit surprised that he didn't get into the Netherlands squad in the first place. I know that, Gakpo, Memphis, Weghorst, are well liked within that camp, and have produced on the biggest stage, but I don't know. It feels like Zirkzee a little bit of a wild card who, if the Netherlands are really running out of ideas, may well be brought on. Like, he is a player who can make things happen. Has done, did so for Bologna last year. Whether or not he gets a move away from Bologna this summer, he is going to be playing Champions League football next season. And you look at that forward line and you just feel like, that I think he can offer something. Steven Bergwijn, Memphis Depay in there, obviously Xavi Simons as well in there too. But I feel like, with the ability for that Netherlands forward line on the wings, I just think there's goals coming out of the wings there. Someone like Zirkzee, who can also be a bit of a facilitator as well, be a goal scorer, I think can be a real asset there. Maybe he's a little bit too similar in terms of how he could be used compared to Gakpo. That would be my worry, and maybe he would be there to just make up the numbers a bit. But at the same time, when you have Frankie de Jong and Koop Meiners getting injured, two central midfielders, and you decide to bring in Maatsen, a left back, and Zirkzee, a striker, then to me that says either Koeman has no idea, like he's just kind of going for the most high profile players he left out, or there is a reason for that. He feels like he needs some more backup in those positions, and he needs some players who certainly in those two who can have the ability to change games late on. So I think I would watch out for Zirkzee. I really, really hope he gets some minutes, because I think he's coming off a really impressive
His confidence
season.
should be high.
So next big thing, Doogie, who's your last?
Viktor Tsygankov of Ukraine.
Nice.
I have actually talked about this guy for years, and if someone could find me the Extra Time podcast clip of talk about him, I would be forever grateful. Just send me a DM. I'd really, really appreciate it, because I do think he could get a move on the back of this tournament. The Metro reporting last week that Arsenal will look at them. AS claimed that Milan are too. Arsenal are looking for a backup right winger. I think he's kind of perfect for the role, to be honest. Look, he's not a complete new kid on the block. He's 26 now. He did 7 seasons with Dynamo Kiev. He joined Verona in January 2023. 5'10", known as the Ukrainian Messi, has delivered in international games beforehand, less so international tournaments, but I remember him scoring against, I think it was France in a Nations League game a few years ago. This season, 8 goals and 7 assists in La Liga for a Verona side that finished third. They nearly scored as many goals as Real Madrid as well. They scored 85 and Real Madrid scored 87, and he was a crucial reason for that. And I'd love for him to have an excellent tournament. He is so fun to watch. Left-footed, can play on the right, can play also centrally as well. And I think he's got shock potential for this tournament rather. And yeah, I hope he gets a move on the back of it.
Yeah, nice. I feel like he was kind of one of the players to watch going into the last Euros as well, when Ukraine, of course, made the quarters. I've also gone for a Ukrainian player for my final next big thing. It's Heorhiy Sudakov, who has
I see a lot of hype around this guy.
Yeah, I mean, he played more minutes than anyone else in qualifying for Ukraine, still only 21 years old. He's been the guy who stepped up at Shakhtar Donetsk in the wake of Mikhailo Mudrik's move to Chelsea. He has really become their star player now. 101 senior club appearances now at 21 years of age. He's scored 20 goals already for them. He has become talismanic for both club and country. Provided both the goals in their 2-1 win over Iceland in the playoff final to get into the tournament. Yeah, he has kind of slowly become the kind of poster boy for Ukrainian football, and you had them down as your dark horses last week. There are a number of players in that Ukraine squad who could impress in this tournament. You're thinking about Zabarnyi, Artem Dovbyk, of course, with Tsygankov at Girona as well. I think Artem Dovbyk, I feel like hasn't been spoken about enough in terms of strikers who could move to big clubs this summer. I'm not really sure why he's not been spoken about. He's proven it.
Atleti's supposedly looking at him.
Oh yeah, Atleti, to be fair.
But
I
that's
just feel
it.
I feel like I'm not sure why Tottenham haven't been linked with him. I'm not even sure. I feel like Arsenal potentially could be linked with him. Like he's, top scorer in Ukraine, top scorer in Spain. Like playing, for an underdog side in Girona. I feel like he's ready for the step up. But Sudakov, certainly I think will get a big move in the next couple of years. Napoli had a £34 million bid rejected for him in January. Shakhtar are now demanding £60 million for him. Ooh. He's got good defensive numbers as well. We expect that he will probably be playing as on the left side of a midfield three this summer. With Zinchenko on the right, or potentially Zinchenko on the left and him on the right, but that would make sense to me. Malinovsky, of course, fighting for a place in that midfield 3 too. Great goal scoring midfielder, just a bit of an all-round threat really, could really add something to what will be quite an exciting Ukraine attack. They're not to be messed with. Let's move on to our final mega move. Dukes, who have you got?
I've got Chris Führich of Germany and Stuttgart. Look, he's not going to start. He's going to be a bench option. They've got Sane, they've got Gnabry, they've got Musiala, they've got Florian Wirtz, of course. But Chris Führich is coming off a brilliant season with Stuttgart. It's an amazing story. He spent time in Dortmund's academy growing up, Bochum's academy growing up, but it was really with Cologne that gave him his first big break. He then moved to Dortmund, but never really played for Dortmund at all. Moved to Paderborn in the Bundesliga 2. Has now spent 3 seasons with Stuttgart in the Bundesliga, and his goal contribution returns have gone 5, 7, 15. Really broke out last year. He is so pacey, is so direct, left winger, does everything with a certain... frantic doesn't feel like a very good compliment, but a certain intensity to his game. Really, really good fun to watch. 4.8 shot creating actions per 90 last year for a Stuttgart side that, finished above Bayern in the table, their highest league finish since 2006-07 when they won the league. And he's got big clubs after him. Spurs and Chelsea have been linked. Again, we're talking about a player in Germany potentially moving to the Premier League. Bayern are looking at him. Leipzig are supposedly looking at him. Dortmund are looking at him as well. I think he's moving after this Euros, although, if Stuttgart are already losing Mittelstadt, that's their entire left flank gone in one summer, which would be a little bit depressing. But that is just the nature of European football at the moment. The big fish tend to get most of the smaller fish.
Yeah, they do. They certainly do. Great. Not even an analogy, metaphor. Nice. Really good shout there. I've gone for a bit of a bait one for my final big move. I'm not sure whether he will actually get a big move this summer, but I'm just not ruling it out. I think Xavi Simons, this is going to be his first real, chance to show what he's got on the international stage.
I can imagine the last Xavi Simons mania kicking off.
Oh, big time. I think if Netherlands are to go far in this tournament, he's going to be the star of the show. His expected goals and assists per 90 last year was around the same as Florian Wirtz in the Bundesliga. Just didn't convert quite as many of his chances, but 8 goals and 11 assists for Leipzig. Was it 19 goals for PSV the season before? He really, really is a star in the making, and I think if he'd had more first-team football by this point in his career, I think people would be talking about him in the same vein as someone like Phil Foden, if I'm totally honest. Like, he really does have just so much ability, and he's certainly not a secret to anyone watching this channel, anyone who watches European football in general, but I think to the wider, more casual football watching public who maybe have not watched much Bundesliga, maybe haven't watched Leipzig in the Champions League so much, haven't watched Dutch football, haven't been keeping tabs on kind of players at kind of PSG coming out of La Masia in recent years. Xavi Simons will become a household name this summer.
Big superstar potential.
And if he does, and if there is a club out there who are willing to spend huge money on him, then I can still see PSG being a little bit tempted. I think any other big club in world football who had just lost Mbappe would be like, this is the guy to fill the void. This is the new figurehead at the club. But it's PSG. Yeah. And you just never know what PSG are going to do, especially with young players coming through there. There's just never a guarantee.
The reports are that he doesn't want to go back to PSG and they don't want to sell him, so they're considering loaning him and hoping that he changes his mind in a year and wants to play for PSG. Bayern have supposedly been looking at him.
Arsenal as well have long been linked with him as well, haven't they? So yeah, interesting stuff. There, I'm not surprised that Xavi Simons doesn't want to go back in many respects, but at the same time,
they do ultimately own you.
He would be, and he would be an absolute superstar there. Maybe he doesn't fancy Ligue 1. Maybe it's just bad memories from his time there up until this point. But that was all we've got time for on Sunday Vibes this week. Those were our kind of ones to watch, players in for big moves off the back of Euro 2024. Let us know who you think are the players to watch at this tournament and what you've made of the tournament so far. Hopefully we've been in for some absolute treats already. I think that's about it, dudes.
Thorough.
Are you what are your thoughts? Quick prediction for the Serbia game tonight.
The Serbia game tonight. Don't do this to me. I think it's going to be nervous. I think England win 2-0, but the goals might come in the final 30 minutes.
Yeah, it does feel like it would be a nervy one, I can't lie. I don't think it's going to be a comfortable watch.
What about you?
I'll say I'll back the ball. I'm feeling nervous. I feel like it could be a draw. I'll say 2-1 England. 2-1 England. I think maybe Tunisia vibes at the 2018 World Cup. Harry Kane to score in the last minute.
Up the three lions.
Yeah, up the 3 lions. But yeah, thanks for watching, everyone, and we will see you tomorrow for, I guess, some reaction to that game. Absolutely. Plus any other stuff going on in the football world. See you in a bit.